All right, here we are. We had a little intermission there, unexpected. When you broadcast from a building that's about 107 years old, sometimes you have things that occur, and I think we had maybe one too many heaters plugged in today and lights, so we're good now, and we've flipped the breaker back on. So, Scott, sorry about that. We'll pick right back up where we were. We were talking about family and all the connections that you have, and certainly I have a lot too. But a lot of your connections were predominantly north of Marshfield. A lot of mine, the ones we have mutual, but then also southwest of Marshfield or southeast of Marshfield, the Rose in that direction. But we talked about um, the connection with the Thomases and the Arthurs and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So. And then, of course, you mentioned your wife, Margie. We haven't talked about your family yet. We're actually moving into that part of the program. So let's just talk about um, your wife Marcy and your children, and how did you guys meet and all that. Let's go to that.
Well, kind of going back
Uh-huh.
with all the family connections, as we said.
Yeah.
So you have all the Arthurs and the Raiders and the Marlins, the Youngs,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot, and then you bring in all the Frakers.
That's
you
right.
know, and how all that intermingled. But you've had several, cousins off of both sides that have married, coming.
Mhm.
So that's all how.
Not really in Arkansas.
Not in Arkansas.
It's clean.
Yeah,
It's clean.
we're at least beyond third cousins on every single one, and most of us have at least six fingers on every hand. That type of thing.
Yeah.
But you're related to a lot of people.
Right. Yeah.
And I probably have more people I'm related to twice than I am once. And we've laughed about that, but it's true.
It is true.
You start looking through all of the lines, like, oh my gosh, they're related and they're related and they're
Right.
related. And
Yeah.
when I would come home from cruising town in high school, my mom would say, well, who'd you see or whatever. So you always have to remember you might be related. So you need
That's
to know
right.
who you're talking to
That's right.
when you're
Sure.
out
That's right.
cruising town. But we've a lot of the connections even to school here. My wife graduated here in '88. She taught school here in the early '90s. Taught
She
kindergarten.
was Marcy Claire.
Marcy
Yeah.
Claire.
Mhm.
Yep. And all of her family, all the Claires and the Dudleys and a lot of Cantrells, that pretty much encompasses everybody else in Webster County
Yeah. Yeah.
that we somehow haven't crossed over in some way. So a lot of family roots here. But Marcy and I met in high school in '85. Her sister and I were out with a bunch of our friends. We all had her sister's 2 years older, close to my age, and we all had friends that were involved in music and different things. So we'd always kind of known one another. So we were all out, cruising town and went to McDonald's one night to get out to get something when McDonald's came to town, which I can still remember when all that happened. That was a big deal.
Mid-80s. Yeah.
In the '80s when
Yeah.
McDonald's came, that was a big deal.
Walmart moved to where Boomgars is now.
Yeah. That was a lot of changing
It was.
for Marshfield at that time. But we got out to go in, and she was coming out with her mom and dad. And I remember asking Teresa, her sister, who teaches at Marshfield as well, "Hey, who's that?" So, well, that's my sister.
Yeah.
Well, we started dating and kind of off and on, and eventually I wised up and married her.
There you
It took me a little while. Sometimes you live through the school of hard knocks and
Well, and
you learn from that
go. You
situation.
went on to college.
Did.
And after high school, graduated in '87 and playing basketball. We didn't touch on that much, but you were a good basketball player. You had some good basketball teams in those days.
We did, and baseball,
Yeah.
cross country as well. A lot of things, but I got hurt. For me, if people laugh about this today, but it's true. I always tell people I want to do one of two things. I either want to sing on the Grand Ole Opry, or I want to pitch for the St. Louis Cardinals. That's what I'd like to do. Well, my back had other ideas.
Yeah.
And didn't ever get to go on and do some of those things I would have liked to have done, in a college setting because of that injury. And it still nags today, but there's a reason for all of that. God
Right.
has a way of just
Right.
kind of forming those things when it's
Right.
needed. And in getting to college, because of Missouri State or SMS at that time, I was in concert chorale, traveling choir, and met a couple of guys, and through that started a music group called the Wingtips, and that began to kind of form and shape some things from a vocal group standpoint that I still get to be a part of and do different things with to this day.
Mhm.
So
The wingtips. You were. I mean, I don't want to patronize you, but you were really really good, and you really came along at a time when I think it was the '80s, I guess, or the early '90s, and people they wanted to listen to that kind of music. I think the general rural communities, you found a niche. You found a niche playing it
Well, even in
at
top
community
40,
events. Yeah,
well, the top 40 had a group at the time called the Nylons
hmm,
that had a number one song, a remake of the old song Kissing Goodbye.
yeah,
Well, for the first time in a long time, coming out of the 60s and 70s and even the early 80s era, there was a vocal group, a cappella group that everybody actually went and bought product for. That was a different thing.
hmm,
And we did. We kind of found a niche, and that kind of started out of we were getting ready to travel to Puerto Rico. The choir was Dr. Guy Webb, who's now passed away,
hmm,
had asked for us to put a couple of groups together to go to area businesses to come in for their Christmas parties, sing a couple songs. They would donate a little money back to our program to be able to go. And we knew 3 songs in the national anthem.
yeah,
And that's what we did. And as we were leaving one place, maybe we're at Hickory Hills or Twin Oaks or somewhere, or at the University Plaza, there would be somebody that would pull on a coattail and say, hey, when I was a kid, this was the song. You need to learn that song.
yeah,
You need to learn this. Well, it just kind of began to snowball.
yeah,
And it became the whole second occupation that none of us ever intended for it to be. We just enjoyed it
yeah,
and enjoyed getting to travel and do stuff. So we'd work full time, be in school, and then jump in a car and drive to wherever and get home wee hours of the morning. Probably made $50 a piece, thought we were the richest people on the planet.
yeah.
And
What a gig for college. I mean, age. I mean, it had to be a lot of fun.
it was. And we got to meet a lot of great
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
We really did. People that, whether it was Frankie Avalon or, whoever
yeah.
that we got to work with and talk with. Jerry Lee Lewis, got to work with him 2 or 3 times. And, you learn and you see and you watch. You learn what to do, maybe what not to do,
Yeah.
in some scenarios.
The group Sha Na had been popular not
Mhm.
too much prior to that. I mean, that was, again, there was people were kind of into that kind of music as a, kind of a, I don't know what the word would be, but wasn't mainline necessarily, but it was, kind of a quirky thing that people would like to listen to in those days.
And it was the songs that they grew up with.
Yeah, I guess it was a remake of the '50s songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was kind of recycling. And we
Yeah.
see that every so
Yeah.
many generations
Yeah.
stuff recycles. And, that led to, an opportunity where you and I were kind of tied together. We
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about, which is a big part of Marshfield community and
Right.
the roots that are here is always the 4th of July parade.
Yeah. We're up to about 91 now, so why don't let's talk about that. That was kind of neat because we did connect there with that time 4th of July parade in 1991. If any of you need a reminder, that's when President Bush came to Marshfield. It was a very special time, and so fortunately, well, you tell the story.
Well, we were on your float
Yeah.
with Walmart out of Lebanon.
Yeah.
And my uncle, your cousin Benny, was going to pull the trailer on that. And people need to understand when you're trying to do something or be in front of, the president or anything, there's a detail, there's a long list, and it takes a long while to go through and to vet everything. You just can't walk up and start doing stuff. That doesn't happen. You have to go through a laundry list of all the background checks to make sure that everything is where it should be.
Right.
And we showed up that day down at the fairgrounds, jump on the float, and Secret Service, they lined everybody else up, and we're standing there, and they still hadn't put us on the float. We're like, what's going on? And Celeste Smith walked up and said, hey, we've got these guys. And the Secret Service said, well, we don't have them on our list. So Celeste, in only the way she could do it, told both of those gentlemen in so many uncertain terms that this was how things were going to work. And they were very kind. And when she was finished, they got on their little radio and said, can we get one more group in behind the horses? Well, if you've ever been at a parade, the last place you want to be is behind the horses. Not a good place to be. And there's always tons of horses in our parade. So off we go, and we laughed about it. We said, wouldn't it be fun if our truck died that was pulling the float, and we just got to keep singing for President Bush. So we get in front of President Bush for the grandstand, and we start singing. And Benny had shut the truck off just so it mess up sounds and that type of thing. So we just started singing. Well, it was time for us to move on, and Secret Service was kind of waving. Well, the truck wouldn't start. So we just kept singing. Well, one of the guys that was on the float with us, that traveled with us a lot, good friend of ours, Mike Hendricks, whose birthday is today, lives in Kansas City, jumped off the float with 2 cassettes in his hand and ran toward the president.
This is like in front of the reviewing stand on the square. Everybody's watching, and you just sang these songs. The president obviously had his attention, I'm sure.
And he was just tapping and singing along, and we kept singing. They said, just keep singing till we get the thing started. So we just kept on, it went to the next song, and Mike runs toward the president. And we watched as sharpshooters dropped to their knees all the way around, and we're going, oh my gosh, they're going to drop him on the lawn. And he walks up and hands those cassettes of ours to the president, waves, and the president waved back at him, and he ran and got back on the float. And we're like, how did you do that and not get shot? And finally, we got the truck started, and we continued on. And we learned later on, and you were part of the motorcade going back to Springfield. Right. We learned that he had those, and at some point in time, wherever, got to listen to at least one of those. And we received a letter back several weeks later saying that, hey, that song that's on side 1 or side 2, that was one of my favorite songs, and so on and so forth. And had a nice handwritten letter from Bush 41 going back. So
now, Scott, that's why we're doing this podcast. That's a perfect example. There's a story that I didn't remember that story. All of it, the details of it. But what a remarkable story. I'm surprised that your friend that ran the tapes up to the president maybe didn't get accosted, tackled by even maybe Wayne Plunkett. Get him away, But anyway,
we wondered if maybe somebody with field glasses or something maybe could see what was in his hand. We didn't know for sure, but that could never happen.
No, it wouldn't.
There's no way something like that could happen today. But nonetheless, he got the cassettes, not 8 tracks, not CDs, but cassettes, right, in his hand. And
but he was known for sending cards. I've got one right here on the wall behind us, a card from the president for being a part of his motorcade, and a signed picture. And I know everyone that was involved in that whole event got those cards. So that's definitely something that he did really well. Well, that's cool. That's really neat. So this was about 91. Well, then, so you sang with the Wingtips a couple more years or so, and then what happened next?
Well, one of the guys that I sang with in the concert chorale at SMS, Missouri State, had started another group, a gospel group, and they had got a gig at Silver Dollar City in 93. And he had called me actually a year before and said, hey, we're going to have this. Do you want to come be a part of this? And at the time, I was working for Barclay Enterprises. I was an accounts manager for Automagic and Jiffy Lube back then. And a lot of stuff going on, still doing a lot of stuff with the Wingtips as well. And the timing of that just didn't seem right. Life happened during that year, a lot of changes. And because of that, looking for some different things toward the end of 93. And he called again at a very opportune time to say, hey, we're going to be doing some stuff. Would you want to come and be a part of this? Well, in the middle of all this, and life that year was rough. It was. In fact, we had come back to the Marshfield parade. We sang in that parade that year, that summer.
In 93.
In 93. A lot of things were changing. Life had changed. Divorce had taken place, and I was moving on to some different things, and just some things that all just kind of collapsed around just the world kind of. And it wasn't just that, but kind of in search of something different, and needed somebody to kind of lead me where I needed to go. And I will tell you that the last person on this planet that I would have told you would have been that person would have been my wife. And if you know my wife, Marcy, she's very quiet, very shy, very meek. But she was the only person that could lead me back where I needed to go. And Ashley Ellison with Chosen Few called me and said, hey, I want you to come to Silver Dollar City in November 93. And I want you to do a couple things with us at the Christmas program. So Marcy was kind enough to go with me. We weren't even dating at the time. And
But you were friends.
We were friends.
Yeah, kind of remained friends through that period from mid '80s till then, right?
Yeah, which
sorta.
is a miracle in itself.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was I was a butt during that time, and I just I didn't deserve a whole lot of good, but some grace was extended to me, and because of that, there were some things that changed,
yeah,
and
yeah.
God sent her into my life to lead it back where it needed to go, and all of that was all part of that plan where Chosen Few was involved. Didn't understand at the time, and went to sing with them in Black Friday, Black Saturday weekend of '93, and we left and came back, and I said, "Well, what do you think?" And she said, "Well, I think you ought to take the job." And so I did, and was with them from that point all the way through the end of 2005.
Yeah, that's a long time.
We were at Silver Dollar City a long time,
Yeah.
on the road 5 years. Got to be a part of some really, really neat things. Got to meet some neat people. Funny story, and the only person that could really appreciate this, because they took me when I was a kid, was one of the people that we got to be friends with because of the road time, was the Statler brothers.
Mhm.
And Grandma Fraker loved the Statler brothers, and her and Grandpa took me to see them at Hammond Center years ago. I was a kid, and there was a huge waiting line, to get up, have things signed. That's back when everybody stayed around for hours and signed, pictures or whatever. And the line was too long, and I know Grandpa was getting antsy. It was getting late. He's going to get 4 o'clock to
No
milk.
milk anymore.
Yeah. He's like, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, if you can get this done in 10 or 15 minutes, that's fine. But otherwise, we got to go." So I got down the stage and realized I couldn't do that. So I went around the back of the stage as only a kid, ornery kid too. I went under the stage, went through all of the stuff, and came out up underneath the apron right in front of Lou DeWitt, the old tenor singer of the Statler Brothers, who's passed away, who wrote the song "Flowers on the Wall." And I popped up, and he looked down at me with that look that only Lou could have, and I had a picture with me, and they all signed it. And I shared this with Don and Harold later, and they all said that look. They all knew that look that Lou had. But I remember us being at the National Quartet Convention and them staying and come to see us the next day to introduce themselves, which is hilarious. That Don and his wife coming to introduce themselves to us. Of course, we knew who they were.
Yeah.
And they would kind of come friends. So when we go to Philadelphia, or I'm sorry, Pennsylvania, part of Pennsylvania or Virginia, where they were close, they would come to see us, whether it was a church or a fair or whatever. And we're at a fair in Virginia, and there was a knock at our bus door. And we looked out. Our road manager was in the entertainment tent. We're getting ready to go on. Our liaison, our lead, was there with them, so we couldn't figure who in the world's here, to see us. And we opened the door, and it was Don Reed, and he was sitting there holding a plate with tinfoil over it. He said, "Boys, I hated when people did this to us, but the wife made you some cookies. Didn't want you to starve while you're here in Virginia." So he came on, and we laughed about that and had prayer that we went and sang. And we were doing a secular set that day. And him and Harold, Don and Harold, were out walking around the fairgrounds. And we were in a secular set before we went into our gospel stuff. And Flowers on the Wall was in one of those sets. Well, I mean, just seconds before that cue to go in, they walk in the back of the tent. They're clapping, and we all realized, "Oh, it's cool. They're here." And then we looked at one and went, "Oh my goodness, we're going to sing Flowers on the Wall. Don't screw it up." So we got through it and didn't mess it up. And when I got home, I told Grandma that they'd come to see. She thought that was the greatest thing in the world. And even though Grandma had a stroke in '94 and was unable to speak, she got the biggest kick out of that.
Yes.
We still hear from them once in a great while. When Harold passed away, we did get a note from Don. When the Cardinals,
2 of them gone now? Or?
Don's still alive.
Okay.
So Harold, the bass singer, passed away.
Right.
Everybody else is still there.
Okay.
The original tenor singer, Lou DeWitt, passed away several years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
But Jimmy Fortune's still alive, and Phil Bosley as well. So they're all still in that Virginia area.
They don't
where
sing anymore together, though. I mean,
all,
Jimmy, I've seen him on talk shows and stuff.
Yeah, he still does stuff, writes
by himself.
But and we did get an email from them during the '04 World Series, and Don had grown up a Boston Red Sox fan. Of course, the Red Sox were not great for a long time. And of course, they beat us in 4 games, and he had sent an email to our publishing company saying, checking on Scott to see if he's in suicide watch after Red Sox sweep Cardinals.
Yeah.
So we thought that was great. That
Yeah.
it's people that we grew up,
Yeah.
kind of idolizing and trying to do
Absolutely.
the things that
Yeah.
we did, kind of in some sense the way they did.
That is neat.
Would take
Really
time
is.
to come see us.
Do
That
you
was a
have any
big deal.
pictures with any of them? Did you get able to take some pictures?
We do some.
Yeah.
And we got to meet people like him and them and Charlie Daniels and
Yeah.
all the different people we got to work with over the years. That
Did
was
you
a
ever
lot
get
of
to
fun.
sing on the Opry stage?
We did.
You did.
We did years ago.
Okay.
There was a show that they were doing in Nashville, a talent thing, and we flew out from Silver Dollar City and did the Opry, and won the competition that was there at the time,
Cool.
and then flew back and did the show that night.
Yeah.
So we got the plane, got the corporate plane with Silver Dollar City, and raced out there, got on the ground, did our thing, and shook hands, and got back on the plane and got back and did the night show.
That's cool.
When we were in Echo Hollow. So
That's great.
but it was funny though. We always thought that, hey, that'd be the big deal. We're standing in that stage,
Yeah,
we're standing on
yeah.
that circle.
Well, you said earlier on the show here that you wanted to be on the stage at the Grand Ole Opry,
And finally
or,
got
or
to
be
do
a
it.
pitcher,
Or be a pitcher. Yeah, the Cardinals still haven't called. I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Well,
Phone's by the bed just in
we're
case.
still trying to pick up pitchers for this year. So you were there till 20 what year?
2005.
5,
Mhm.
and then what happened?
Came off the road.
Mhm.
We kind of put things on sabbatical. We had come back from being over at a missions trip over in Central America and being things in Nicaragua, and learned a great deal while we were there. It was very neat to be a part of what was taking place there.
Yeah.
And also you appreciated really what you had. When you at that time, Nicaragua was the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And it's nothing for us to go to McDonald's a couple times a day if you're going here and maybe coming home from a basketball game and running through McDonald's. There, if a family of 4 went to McDonald's, that was a week's wage.
Wow.
And you learn some lessons with that, and just how appreciative you were of the things that you had. But when we came back, we knew things were changing. All of us were doing more individual things. I was preaching, doing evangelistic work. Ashley was starting a church. Brian was doing more of that stuff as well. So we knew we were going to do less as time went on. And I went back on the road for the next 4 years. So I was gone quite a bit of time. And by '09, I was gone so much that my youngest at the time came in and asked my wife, he said, does Dad still live here?
Yeah.
So we knew something had to change, whether we're going to take everybody on the road, the whole family on the road, and be the Von Fraker family singers or whatever it's going to be, or something had to change.
Yeah. Sure.
And Dan Britton from Pierce Arrow had called me several times about coming that way. And I had, just kind of put it because it just wasn't on my radar.
Mhm.
And it was 2010, early February. And I was in Illinois speaking on a Sunday night on the way home, just kind of praying about, God, where do you want us to go? Where are things happening? And Marcy was praying about the same thing at home. And lo and behold, he called the next day and said, look, I know we've talked, but I need you to come down and talk to me for 20 minutes. That's all I'll need. And Marcy said, well, listen, why don't you at least go down and sit down with him, at least give him an educated reason why, you're thinking of not doing it. And I walked away taking a job that I was not anticipating doing, and really pulled out of the parking lot and went, what did I just do?
Yeah.
And why am I here? We realized.
Marcy did.
Well, she did. She was ready to have me home. But that summer, that was 2010. By May of that year, early June of that year, we realized that we discovered that Marcy had breast cancer. And because of that, I was not gone. I was not in New Jersey or Colorado, wherever else speaking. And there was engagements that were still set for me to do those things. And Pierce Arrow was going to be good enough to allow me to do that. But I was able to put all those things aside and was able to go to treatments and stuff with her that I wouldn't have been able to have done otherwise. And we kind of begin to see kind of where things were changing. And it allowed me to do some things even in our own home church that I hadn't been able to do for years because of all of my years on the road. So God has a sense of humor sometimes in the things he does, but he also has a way of gently showing us where to do and where to go and how to close the door and open the door when it's needed.
That's right. back up just a little bit. So when did you and Marcy get married then?
95.
In 95. And then we'll talk about your kids for a minute.
Well, we have three.
Mhm.
Lakin, who's in St. Louis, Lindy in Springfield, Logan down at College of the Ozarks, and I've got one that's in Tulsa as well.
Mhm.
So kind of spread out. Everybody's, here, there,
Yeah.
and everywhere. But good stuff. Miss getting to go to the ball games and miss
Yeah.
getting to go to that stuff. And the part that people don't realize when you're doing Branson shows or you're on the road, you miss so much.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
just no way to get that back.
Yeah.
And if you get to one, you're thrilled,
Absolutely.
and you're looking at your watch, and you're going, okay, hey, sing that last song, or spike the ball, or hit it, or pitch
Mhm.
it, or shoot it. Don't go into overtime, and you race to your car and drive 9 to get back to the show.
Exactly. I think, boy, you really did hit the nail on the head. You don't think about that, but like, I know Logan was a good ball player, played basketball and what have you. And I mean, you might have had a little break maybe in January. Did you have a break in January down there in February?
Yeah,
maybe?
you did.
So but you probably didn't get to see any games in December, or if because of your
Right.
show schedule.
When they were younger and they played earlier, you could get to those.
Yeah,
By the time they got to
Saturdays
high
and stuff,
school,
yeah.
you couldn't do
right,
that.
people don't really think about that, or the band concerts that the daughters could have been in, or whatever it might be. And imagine if the Peter Hershen, he can't let all of his employees off for every kid's game.
Yeah,
You're an employee of the corporation, and you got to be there to perform. So
Lakin was born in July of '97. We did a show that night. Marcy was with us. Walked up out of Echo Hollow,
yeah,
which the walk out of there should have put her to labor, but she
Yeah.
made it. And Lindy was born while we were in rehearsals
yeah,
for Echo Hollow. My
Yeah.
oldest son Austin he watched a lot of that stuff, so he would be with me in time, so he'd get to see the shows. But the girls, they saw a little bit of those shows as they're just toddlers. So they kind of have some recollection of those things. Of course, Logan wasn't here yet before we were on the road, and
yeah.
so I kind of wish they could have got to see all that. And I wish that grandma and grandpa and my dad would have had an opportunity to be able to
Yeah.
see some of those shows. I know they would have enjoyed that a great deal.
They were so proud of you anyway, and I mean, before you were performing, I can imagine. So Pierce Arrow, you had a really good run there. You started there in what year then?
2010,
2010, and you ended there in when?
2021.
2021. So that was another 11 years. So
And the funny thing was that they were getting ready to go into 2 shows, and when I told them I would come to work, they were starting. I mean, the show was starting in a week, so I learned 2 shows in the week, driving up and down the highway, just listening to the songs, praying I could get something right, and praying nobody comes on opening night. Well, in the very front row sits Gary and Jackie Fraker. I'm like, I forgot half of that show. I don't know if they were there the night my shoe flew off. That may have been that first night where I did a quick change, come out on stage, and my shoe went flying off in the audience.
What better people could have been there? She was probably, hey Scott, hey go, yeah. I can imagine your cheering section. with
It
them
was
on the front
true.
row. Yeah.
It was true. The only time things go wrong is when someone's there that you know. And for me, if there's 10,000 people in the audience and I don't know one of them, I can do anything,
Right,
everything I
right.
do. If there's one person I know,
Yeah.
I get a little sheepish.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the
with
time
them though, they'd have your back. And she'd probably say, "Yeah, I used to wipe his butt."
and maybe spanking from time to time too when it was needed.
Goodness. Well, amazing career, and the one thing we haven't mentioned is your vocal range, and I think that's something that's very few people can have on a resume. Now, I'm not a music person. My brother Barth is, of course. Your range is a 4 point something, or what? Tell us about that.
At some point in there,
Yeah.
yeah, in my gooder days,
Yeah.
it was 4 plus octaves
Uh-huh.
on the keyboard, and I was a kid soprano. In fact, when I was in junior high, and I still have some friends of mine from those girls' choirs that I know to this day, and that's how we met. We met several of them because I was the only boy in the girls' choir in junior high. We went to Evangel my 8th grade year. My voice had not changed yet.
Is that because there wasn't a boys choir?
No. There was a boys' choir.
Your voice was just that high.
I'm just that high.
Huh.
In fact, Susan Case, who
Yeah.
passed away
Mhm.
some time ago, was one of my music teachers, and she was part of that junior high chorus.
Mhm.
And she had told them. I remember us going into a side room, and I was the only boy in with all these girls, and she said, "Well,
It's
he
not a
can
bad
sing."
deal, is it? For a junior high kid?
It's a great thing to meet girls. However, it does make you look a little strange when you walk out on the stage and they're like, "What's that boy doing up there with all those girls?" You know, thinking, "Oh, he's just being a smart aleck," and he's up there. But I can remember her saying, "Well, he could do the second soprano solo," and I'm like, "No! I don't want to. I don't want to do that." But I remember we walked out, did our thing, and then the boys' choir came and sang with us. But I was the only guy that was there.
Interesting.
Voice finally changed. I always wanted to sing bass. I was a, Richard Sturban, Harold Reed, all those guys, J.D. Sumner fan.
Mhm.
Always wanted to be able to, that was the cool part. And it took a while. It took till about the end of school before that changed, and I was able to do that. And as my voice changed, I was a bass two at Missouri State SMS. And we got to travel and do a lot of stuff too. That was very educational as well. But because of that, I was singing bass every day. The other part was still there, and I had a vocal teacher there at SMS, Dr. Everett, who said, "Look, just keep working both sides of that. It'll continue to grow if you'll work that." So I did. So for my shtick with Chosen Few was I would sing bass all night long and then jump up and sing lead, second tenor on a song. So that was kind of that was kind of my little moment, if you will. So, I sang bass with the Wingtips and Chosen Few and did a little bit at Pierce Arrow. But when I went to Pierce Arrow, I was doing more lead and baritone stuff, but did do a year of bass there when we were without somebody. So it was all fun, and you learn different parts of that. I think I'm a better singer at 55 than I was at 25. I think I've learned a few things. I'm smarter, in some ways. My wife is not here, so she can't, dispute what I just said. But that was a thing where you do learn. I think you appreciate it more. And I do miss my time with the guys singing once in a while, but we've been very fortunate, where things began to transition. And again, God knew kind of what was going on.
Yeah.
And as my Logan was about to be a senior, I didn't want to miss anything else. And in doing so, it's like, how do we do this? Well, one of the guys that sang with me at Pierce Arrow he and his wife were working at a real estate firm in Branson, and I was a lender years ago. So we would talk contracts every night. And I said, "Hey, here's a way to maybe be able to help that client by going this route with a program." He said, "You just need to get your license and come work with us." And that's not my thing. I would never thought that would have ever happened. Well, it transitioned in that way, and wound up doing that and getting my real estate license, and that's been.
Real estate's been pretty good too. The time, I mean, you got in at a good time. If I'm not
I think
mistaken.
so.
Yeah.
I think so, and a lot of things learned. Things are kind of going back the way they were around 2018, 2019, which was still very solid. But it's been very rewarding in a lot of ways. And it's given me another opportunity to be able to serve in a way I never thought possible. Shepherding a church and being a realtor are very similar. You're there on some of the happiest days of people's lives. And you're there, sometimes it's very trying and very challenging for them because of maybe a death or a change in family or a move. And you're there to take care of them. You're just there to serve and hold hands and take care of the stress that you can take care of so they don't have to deal with that. So,
Sure.
So it's been very rewarding in that regard.
And you work out of the Branson office down there.
I have an office at home here, and then I have an office there at Wycott Realtors, the Griffin Company on 265. And very fortunate to be part of that group.
You're known everywhere, but down there, obviously, you've got a captive audience, I'm sure, somewhat. People know you and recognize you from all your career years that you spent down there. So
the strangest thing is when people call me from California or Colorado or New Jersey or whatever, and they said, "Hey, I'm looking at a place down in Mansfield or West Plains or Houston. Do you know anything about that?" Well, either we played ball there, we fished there, I've sang there, I've preached there, and I've got friends in all of those areas. So you do have knowledge of those things. So everything in life, you gather things and you put them on a shelf, and sometimes you're able to
That's
pull
right.
those back out to use those
That's
to
right.
be able to help and grow something else. And that's kind of where,
Yes.
real
Totally.
estate has been.
Totally believe that. And certainly you got Webster and Eastern Greene counties covered pretty well too.
We have quite a bit of stuff there. Stone, Christian,
Yep.
Taney County.
You actually live in Webster County.
I live in Webster County.
That's good.
Still do. I've gone from one. I went from the last house in Webster County going east on M, and I'm just about the last house going west on Old Route 66. So I haven't. People say, "Well, how far have you got?" I've got from one end of the county to
That's
the
right.
other
That's
over
right.
the last few
That's
years.
right. Well, Scott, that's great. This has been so much fun, and I knew it would be. Sorry for the little blurb we had with the power, but hopefully we didn't lose anybody and they picked us right back up. If not, they'll be able to catch us anytime now on YouTube, actually for infinity. So, and that's what our goal is to capture this information. And everybody has a story, and you have a great story, but probably the high point of your story is the fact that you are a man of God and you are preaching the gospel. And let's end today a little bit on that note. In other words, tell us a little bit about your evangelism career and what you've done over the years, and maybe what you're still doing.
The thing that chosen few allowed for us to do when we were on the road was again to build those relationships. And as I was kind of transitioning out of the getting on a bus on a Thursday and getting back home on a Monday before the kids went to school, was I could tell that God was moving us in different directions. And one of the things that we did early 2000s was that we started hosting in the greater Branson area life building retreats. And we had a number of those and very successful, whether it was the men's retreat or youth retreats or life building retreats for all people in general. And one of our mentors, who's in Hot Springs, Arkansas, said, you guys should be doing this on your own. And we're like, we don't understand. We like the way it's set up. We like being home for an extra weekend.
Yeah.
And he said, look, you all know what to do and how to do it. He said, you all need to be doing these on your own. So we did start doing some of that on our own around the country. Maybe we were in Richmond, Virginia for a weekend, and we did a seminar for a whole weekend and had breakout sessions with people. And those things, again, those little things began to foster where things were going. I knew I was supposed to preach as a junior in high school, just didn't choose to do it.
Yeah.
Chose to go my way. And because of that, there was a lot of headache and heartache that went along with that.
Sure.
And again, you learn one way or another, you learn. And as time progressed, that was becoming more apparent that there were some things that need to be taken care of. So I began to travel, and I'm actually licensed out of Parkrest Baptist Church, our home church in Springfield. And they, blessed us and sent us out. And that's what we did for a good 5-6 years.
Yeah.
And even when I was at Pierce Arrow, and even today, I'm still able to now, because that schedule is not so tedious and it's not tied you down for 10 months out of the
Right.
year. Now when someone calls and says, hey, we've got a thing going on in August, is there a chance of you being a part of that? I can at least look at the calendar and say, let me look and come and be a part of a life building retreat. Used to have revivals. We don't have a lot of those anymore.
We don't call them that anymore.
That's a different name for that. But it's been rewarding. And I think people realize when they get around me that I'm not somebody that's name was under a neon light. I'm just one of them.
Yeah.
If you take a study of my life, you learn what not to do. In the mistakes that have been made, and I've tried to take those things and stand on them as opposed to them standing on me as they did for a number of years because of some really bad choices. But like I said, I've used those as things to stand on and not for those to stand
We've all
on.
had those, and it's how we react to those and how we adjust and ask for his forgiveness, his grace. That's the key, I think. Have to be able to ask for it and then accept it.
And then we put limits on ourselves.
Yeah.
Because there's always things we can't do. Well, that's not.
Well, and I think he influences us too. I think the Lord, we have a change, and so we know those limits are important. Before we didn't, we thought we were invincible.
Mhm.
That doesn't apply to me, but then we realized they do apply to us. I think that's very important that we continue to recognize, and it's an ongoing deal. I mean,
It sure is.
we're tempted every day, and we got to continue to stay on the path. But
Hopefully
so
those lessons learned
yeah,
help me, in what I do
absolutely.
today. Hopefully it makes me a, better neighbor. Hopefully it makes me
Absolutely.
a better father or husband. Hope it makes me a better, you know, a board of director seat person, that when these things happen, that there's hopefully a calmer voice that
Mhm.
says there's a different way we can do this. And, hopefully those things that I have learned through time, I can continue to use those and continue to serve in whatever capacity
Yeah.
God chooses
Right.
for me to do that.
If someone did have a retreat or did have some kind of what we would used to call it a revival, now we might call it a meeting, a camp meeting, or an encounter or whatever. Are you available?
Mhm.
Okay, so if anyone, this is an invitation for
Sure.
anyone that would like to contact you, if they had a need or a request, then feel free to contact Scott and see what the calendar looks like. That's great to know that people might have a need for that sometimes. That's good. Well, anything else you want to wrap up with? Finish up. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do a verse of how great thou art or anything, do you? I know. I knew you wouldn't. That's putting you on the spot. But.
We'd always say, hey, there's a CD for that. There's a cassette for that somewhere. And because of YouTube and all that stuff, there is
Yeah,
more music out there, and some you wish you could draw back.
that's actually a good point. Go to YouTube and probably find some good songs out
All the old albums from Chosen Few are on YouTube.
there.
All the Nashville recordings and all that stuff, and a lot of old footage from Silver Dollar City
Yeah.
or being on the road,
Yeah.
video stuff. So, yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff there. Like I said, some that I wish to goodness I could pull back or delete, but I can't do that.
That's all a part of who you are, man. That's history.
I'm just glad we didn't have Facebook and YouTube when I was.
Yeah, we all are. Son, what time did you get on last night? Oh, I don't know. Probably about midnight. Yeah, right. How about one?
According to the phone.
Yeah,
you got it right
yeah,
here.
today. But back then, it's like kind of the honor system, wasn't it?
That was.
Yeah.
Sure was.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you coming in. We'll see y'all next week. We'll have another outstanding guest, I promise you. Thank you.